Hi, we're the Georgic girls. I'm Tina.
I'm Emily.
I'm Ivy.
And that was Ronan. He was there. He's not a girl, but he loves to be Georgic too. And we are happy to show you our garden. I've raised my children in the garden, and I'm raising my grandkids there. And I think Georgics is about intentions and what you want to accomplish in your life. And I love the freedom that gardening brings, and learning to live on the soil and to be able to produce by your own hands the things that you eat. And I've been doing it for almost 28 years now, and I'm still learning so much, and my daughters are even teaching me things. And so it's really exciting to do this as a family and to share our passion and love with you. So let's go into the garden. Okay, I want to show you a little bit about container gardening. Some of you might not have a lot of property to grow things. I have had years where I have only had containers, and tomatoes and all kinds of things grow really well. Nice thing about containers, especially if you look at these two plants here, this is a patio tomato. This is a variety that is made to grow in a pot, and it's been my most prolific grower. I've had to go in and thin out, and I need to do a little more thinning on the leaves, but you can see some tomatoes coming on. We've been eating off of this for almost a month, and it's June, middle of June, so that's really good. A lot of gardeners will have competitions. Who can have the first 4th of July tomato, or the first tomato by Memorial Day? We had our first one about mid-May, and so I always like to take a Facebook post and post it so that I can remember in years and kind of test myself to see if I can get an earlier tomato. But this is a great variety, and you can see some more little flowers coming on here. Now this is how you get your tomatoes to grow, to get more abundance. You spank them. You know, it's not okay to spank kids anymore. So you can just go out and take your frustrations out on those tomatoes, because what happens is a tomato is unique in the pollination. You have male and female pollen self-contained in the flower. So when you spank it, and the wind helps with that sometimes, and I live in a pretty windy place, but what that does is it activates that pollen, and you'll get a richer abundance of tomatoes. Here we have some bell peppers, and you can see this one's starting to turn red here. Oh, we've got a little blossom end rot, so I need to add some calcium and things to my soil. If your tomatoes and peppers start to get like that, the bottom gets mushy. It might not be blossom end rot. That might just be from the sun. I'll have to, because the rest of them are looking okay. But you can add, there's different ways, Epsom salts and things like that. And I prune these throughout the growing season in different ways. Here we have another tomato plant. This was almost completely dead. You can see some dead stuff down here, and I just let it continue to grow. I work a lot of jobs in theater, and so I'm very busy, and sometimes things get neglected. And so we just go in when we can, clip the dead stuff off, and it's coming back really nicely. We'll just give it a little, and this is a cherry tomato plant. So, and these if I keep them in a pot, and if I move them into a place that's more sheltered when it comes, you know, October and such, I can have fresh tomatoes off the vine up until Thanksgiving usually, especially if I have it in a pot that I can bring inside. Just inside a sunny window, I can keep my harvest going for a long time. One of the great benefits of planting in pots. Here we've got some lettuce. This has been growing great, and this is starting to bolt. It's starting to get hot. So when it starts to go to seed like that, when it bolts, it starts to get tall and thin. You want to kind of cut those off. Once your lettuce bolts, it does start to get bitter. So you can taste it and see if it's past the time. And that still tastes fine. So I'll harvest some of that for tonight for dinner. Oh, this I just pulled out one of my pots. It's just a corn. Just put it in there temporarily. I'll transplant it into my garden. I have some cute little fairies called granddaughters, and I have found lots of corn and sunflowers. So I think they've helped just kind of spread the seeds, but they're growing in all kinds of places that we don't want them to. Most of my strawberries here are out in my spring garden, but you can see that they do really well in pots as well. And they're getting some pretty good flowers on them. These are obviously June bearing because you can see the flowers. Here we have a Mod Podge. This was all, it's green onions. Some of them are growing larger than others. Depends on how deep and close you plant them. And then we had a couple of volunteers in here, some chard and some kind of squash. Not sure what that is. I'll probably pull it out because it's gonna take over the pot if I don't. I've got a couple more. Anyone needs some plants? I've just got more than I know what to do with this. This is my garlic. It's usually something you winter over, but I just took some garlic from the health food store that's organic, and I took the cloves, planted them so we can have some even though it's summer. Anyway, we've got some other peppers here. These are a yellow variety, and we even have some blueberries. We just started, just little things. They won't produce this year. You have to have 2 different varieties of blueberries in order for them to cross-pollinate. But you can grow almost anything in a pot.
I've been so excited to actually have a garden after a few years of not having access to one besides my mom's, but we really just got that started. And so I've really tried to take this small space and do a lot with it. It's different having your own garden and being fully in charge of it. And so I have made so many mistakes and I'm still learning a lot of things. So here are some of the things I'm still learning. You can see here I have these tomato plants in their pots. These are cherry tomatoes and they're tall. They're way taller than I am. You can see it goes all the way up there. But they're just going off. I'm really glad about this because I have north-facing windows. So I wasn't sure how much sun I was going to get because this patio doesn't get a lot of sun, and when I moved in the winter time, it didn't have any sun actually on the ground at all. So that was something that led me to study the earth and study the cycles of the world, because I knew that in the summertime the earth's axis turned and hopefully I'd get more sun coming up and shading the northern side of my balcony so I would actually get some sun. I still make a lot of mistakes. I'm learning a lot, especially in this space. I'm still learning how to use it properly. So you can see my zucchini plants right here are getting really viney and kind of going on the ground. I originally planned for it to be on this balcony right here along this railing, but that gets so much sun, it's so hot and dark, it just burns it. So I'm having to try to make a decision of something else that will benefit this plant. So one thing that's leading me to is considering different construction designs for a railing or for a trellis that would work for me, and also just considering the design of my whole patio garden as a whole. I move this around a lot, and that's kind of a benefit of patio gardens and pot gardening, is that you can move it around as much as you need to find the right light source, to take it back if it's getting too hot, or put it back out in the sun if you've got shade. And so it's really forgiving. I've got lots of different little tomatoes, and because I am north facing and I don't get a ton of light, I don't get enough for the tomatoes. So you can see this guy, instead of being really bushy, he's really tall, and he's leggy because of that. So that's something I'm still learning too, whether it's worth having those tomatoes that get super leggy. Because as you can see, sometimes they get so leggy, they fall over the cage, and this one's going all the way over and it's resting on top and now actually growing back up. So that's another thing that I have to consider is, do I trim it now and cut it off and try to contain it, or do I trellis it back up? One thing I did was I purchased a lot of these pots from both the dollar store and Dollar General, and that's where almost every single one of these pots are from. I also found a few at thrift stores, like this big one here. I found this wooden box and I painted it, as well as this wooden box. I purchased this full of soil from a local guy off of Facebook. This was a gift from my mother. But all of these ones that you see over here, excluding that and that, were the dollar store and thrift store. And so it was a really good place to start. And now that I'm a little more established and I can put some more time into it, I will be upgrading. So you see this big guy here, this big old tomato plant. I probably could have pruned him a lot better, and I probably need to, because he's just fallen over. And a big part of that is that his pot is way too small. That kind of pot, I think it's a 8-inch or a 10-inch, and it just doesn't hold enough water to get all the way up to the top of the plant. And so by the time it uses all the water, when I water that, it doesn't get all the way up. So before I have been able to get bigger pots for it, I've improvised. I purchased this little pot container to catch water, and I will bottom water it. So I will fill it up with water in the morning and let it suck up all that water throughout the day. And when I come back in the afternoon or evening, it's had enough water. So even if I don't have the best circumstances, it's all give and take. So you make do with what you have, and you just keep your eye out for abundance. And I've been really trying to practice that in my life, the rule of prosperity and abundance. And I just had a bunch of larger pots, larger containers like this come into my life as a gift. And now I can adjust and adapt. And sometimes you make big mistakes, like accidentally cutting off your entire plant from the root and killing it. And you just say, dang it, oh well, life happens, and move on.
I really want you to show you a living, working garden, in that there's there's weeds that need to be pulled always, and there are plants that need to be ripped out and replaced, and all kinds of things. There's all kinds of things we need to do out here. So I want to show you just the whole gamut of how things work. So we're going to step into the spring garden. We call it the spring garden because we planted it in the spring and we had to fence it in. And it was great because you can see our fencing here. It's not the most beautiful thing, but what's beautiful to me is we didn't spend any money on it. This was all materials that we gathered. We were able to get some of it from areas that are building new homes. They have all kinds of chicken wire that they toss out that's brand new. And so that's what we use, a lot of it. And then a lot of the posts were things that we had around. We were very fortunate in someone down the street tossed out tons of poles and things like that, and put it out free, and it was exactly what we needed. So very grateful for that. Providence is one of the key principles of Georgic's, and providence works in my life and it works in my garden. So let's step into the spring garden now. As you can see here, spring has sprung and it's come and gone. And so we can see the ends of the broccoli here. The chickens did get into the garden one day and they ate it down to almost nothing. I decided to leave them. There was barely any green left. We've got some broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage down in this row down here. I decided to leave it and see what would happen, and it all grew back. Unfortunately, it postponed the harvest time so late that the broccoli has been bitter and not good. But it was something I wanted to try and see what would happen. Once it gets hot, those spring vegetables they start to go away, and that's okay because that makes room. Down here we have a bunch of carrots, and we've got some Swiss chard, and we've got some weeds. Got to pull those out, get that out of here. And we've got a lot of volunteer tomatoes this year that have been coming up right along here, and I'm just letting them go in most places. This is where I had my tomatoes last year. It's important to rotate your crops because you have certain diseases and pests that will come back year after year, but rotating crops will help not only put the right nutrients in the soil and avoid depleting the soil of certain nutrients, but it can also help with those other things that I mentioned about pests and things. We still have a lot of lettuce here, We've got some onions down here that's growing, and best way to harvest that, even though they're really close, as you can see, that's okay. We thin by just harvesting the ones in the middle, and then that gives the ones on the outside right there to grow fuller, and those are still really good. I like to plant a variety of lettuce because some are early, some are later, and so then that extends your harvest. Plus it makes a beautiful salad. Look at this gorgeous, gorgeous purple. And it is so yummy too. It's so gorgeous in the salad bowl. And again, you can see we've got more tomatoes. So this is the other half of our spring garden here. We just planted some berries. We haven't been in this place for very long, but we've got some berries planted. We've got some kale and chard. You can see here, this has already gone to seed. This actually looks like a cabbage. So I will probably put a bag over part of that, and these will become the seeds that I can plant next year. So from one plant we can get just an infinity of seeds. Here I've got some celery. Now what I need to do with this is you want to plant celery, and so I need to get some cardboard or paper and put it around here to make that tall, nice stem instead of having it bushy like that. So that's something that needs to be done, but you can see all that celery growing, and boy, let me tell you, when you pick something straight from the garden, especially celery, it's 3 times as flavorful and potent as you get from the grocery store. It's absolutely delicious. Okay, here we have our fastest growing plant in the garden. It's so prolific. It is our everyday common day weed. Now this particular weed actually, it grows so fast and it's prevalent in my garden, and I'm always picking at it. But the nice thing is I think it's called purslane. I need to look it up. You can stir fry these and eat them, and some people like them. I haven't had time for that yet. I only have time to pull them and throw them aside sometimes. So sometimes the garden produces what you don't know you need. Here we have Brussels sprouts, and these are so cool. It's going to grow up on a really tall stalk, and all the Brussels sprouts will grow along the stalk. You can see that the leaves, we've got something eating a little bit of it. You want to really be able to come out into your garden and look and see what's happening. You can see that we have some leaf curl here, and that means probably that it needs water. Sometimes it means that you've watered too much. So every year you're going to learn more about your different crops. I choose a couple crops every year that I really study, and I look at a lot of websites and I do a lot of experiments trying to learn more about them so that I can have a better garden. We'll scooch down. We've got some more celery and some more Brussels sprouts, and I'm hoping that they'll grow tall and help shade my lettuce row here. So that's another thing you can do is plant accordingly. So because we live in St. George, it gets 115 degrees here. I mean, that lettuce will be decimated by then, but you can help shade crops with others. Take a peek in here. Oh my goodness, look here. And these are just growing like gangbusters. You can actually eat these as is. They're better as pickles, but we've got quite a few on the vine. Oh, here's some lemon cucumbers in here, and they'll turn yellow.
Over here.
And then we've got some others down here, some other varieties. What do we have? You can see we built this trellis to help them climb so that we can actually walk through here. We had some plants die, so I replanted. It'll just, extend the season. You can see the smaller plants there. Don't be afraid to replant. If something dies, stick a seed in there. Oh, look at here. We've got some Armenian cucumbers. These are delicious. They are so sweet, but one needs a little bit more time. But these are absolutely delicious and sweet, and they grow long, and they just grow like gangbusters. There's some more. Oh, there's a big one, that one. That's the one I should have picked right there.
Oh, nice.
We're gonna have that for lunch.
Yeah.
Here you go, Ronan. That's gonna be yummy. That might be a little too big. I can't believe how fast they're growing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and there's more. Yeah. So, yes. Ronan, come tell me, what do you like about gardening?
I like that we don't have to just come and hand water. We can just get our hose and just set it down.
Oh, great. Yeah, this year we did put in some irrigation with some soaker hoses, and it was not expensive and it was not difficult. So we're going to show you that a little bit later, but I agree, that has been such a blessing to us. And someone was selling this for $10. It was a whole system of hoses. I think it was 100 feet of hoses, and then it had all of these attachments in it. She sold the whole thing for $10, and then I went and bought another one. I found, once I knew the brand, because I put it together and did this one. I thought, oh, that is fantastic, because we literally were spending hours and hours out here watering every day and hand watering. So this has enabled us to save so much time. And so I just recently went and bought, and you don't have to buy the whole kit. I would suggest buying one of the kits. And this brand just happens to be Element. And it had 100 feet of soaker hose and then all of the attachments. And I only used a couple of attachments, so I had a ton left over. And so what I did is, and I think it was probably about $35, I think, at one of the local hardware stores, garden stores. But I went to Tractor Supply and got 100 feet of hose for $18. And this, you literally cut it and then you put an end on it. So it comes with this end here that the hose goes on it, and then it has the finished end here, but I can cut it wherever I need it. I can put a splitter in it and do 2 or 3 or however many I want to do. I could do this and then the splitter off of this if I want, and just lay it out first. If you lay this in the sun, then it warms up and then it's more malleable, and then you just lay it out in the rows you want it, cut it and attach it, and it's that easy. It literally is that easy. Okay, so now we're getting into some of our tomatoes. Here we've got, and I've got some more basil planted in here. Now you look, this one's not doing well. This folks is not a healthy plant, just in case you were wondering. If you are new to gardening, just feel free to pull these out and toss them aside. Now I don't want to put this in my compost because I'm not sure exactly what killed it. So if there's some type of a fungal disease or something, I don't want to introduce that into my compost because that compost is going to go back in the soil. So when I don't know what killed the plant, it's not going in the compost. Yeah, do you think this one needs to come out, Ronan?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right. So we should probably pull those out and just make room for other things. We can put green beans in there. Green beans you can plant all season up through July, and green beans are great to plant in with your tomatoes because they set nitrogen into the soil, and they're great companion crops. Okay, alongside our tomatoes here, and we have some pepper plants, and some of them have died. I haven't replanted those, but we'll have plenty of peppers all the way down. We've got some more peppers elsewhere. So, and with the heat, they're just gonna go like gangbusters. We've already picked quite a few.
It's a sunflower.
A sunflower, yes. So I want to show you how you can tie it. There's lots of ways to stake tomatoes, but you can see I have a stake here, and I think this is a big boy, which needs a bigger stake, but for now, and you really want to get your stakes and things in early. We had a bunch of plants that a bunch of tomato plants that we weren't sure the variety. We thought most of them were Roma, which would have done great on these, but it looks like they're different varieties than we thought. They were mislabeled or something. We had received some from someone in our neighborhood. So, but what you can do is you can take some twine like this and just go around a stem, okay? And then you want to twist it, and then just go here and tie it. And you can tie this on a trellis or a stake. And I'm just gonna do a little knot, and that's gonna give it some support. And I could do it in a couple places, and that will just help bring things up more. Another thing you want to do with your tomatoes Looks like, oh, right here is a good variety. So I want you to see, here we have a stem. This is a sucker. This grows, I call it the armpit. I'm sure other people, but if you pinch those off, okay, and you could even root those if you want more plants, but I got enough plants. Here's let's find another one. Rona, let's see if we can find another sucker that we can prune off. Here's one right here. Okay, right there. If we prune those off, just pinch them off. Okay, that also helps all of the energy go to the plant. The rest of the row down here, I call my orphan row, because they were the saddest, most miserable little plants that overgrew in their pots, and I just thought, well, I'll plant them anyway, we'll see what they do. So why don't you go ahead and pan down there, Emily, and show us what we have there. We've got some beautiful purple cabbage.
Mom.
And this is one variety of eggplant. Now this is the first time I've ever grown eggplant. I had eggplant as a child and I gagged on it. I hated it, but I decided I'm gonna grow up. I'm gonna try it and see if I like it. So we've got some broccoli here.
We got
Some kind of, looks like some Swiss chard there. I don't know how this is doing. It's still small. Here we have, step out of the light, honey. Here we have a different variety, and you can tell it because it's got brighter flowers. This is an eggplant, and we've got a couple more growing. So I'll have to find a tasty way to cook that. The intention was to build a tall, because these are pole beans, it was to build a tall trellis, and just haven't got there. So we'll see what happens, because these are going to get tall. So sometime we've got to find the time to get this trellis in the midst of costuming musicals, which is all day sometimes, and taking care of my family. So not everything happens. We have intentions sometimes. They don't follow through because for one reason or the other, but we'll see what happens. Then over here we have rows of corn, and they're separated by rows of beans down there, and we've got different squashes. We've got spaghetti squash and acorn squash. You can see the shape here. That's the acorn shape. We've got butternut, so we'll have lots of yummy squash. These are doing well. Yeah, corn's coming on nicely. Oh, look at that. We've got our first silks. Nice. And then down here we've got some onions and some peppers and more tomatoes. Ronan, how many tomato plants did we plant?
We planted, so we had 2 on the porch, and we planted 84.
84 and 2, how many is that?
86.
And then we have a bunch of volunteers, so we should get, 2 or 3 tomatoes if we're lucky, I think, this year.
Say it one more time.
Here's our tantalum in this row.
Yes, we have planted several varieties. We have muskmelons, we have cantaloupe, hill, jumbo, several varieties. And then we also have some of the green kind, which name escapes me right now. Honeydew. We have honeydew. Oh, looking good. I've never had sweeter than right off the vine. Oh my goodness, just delicious. This is my solar light I was talking about. I got it for super cheap on Marketplace from someone, and it just soaks up the sun, and then I can take this light and put it in any of my posts that I've put down. These act as a hose guide, so that when I'm pulling the hose around, I don't kill my plants. And these are just, again, things that I had from leftover things that we're not using anymore, and that's helpful. You probably not noticed, maybe you have, but a lot of people like to build on a hill and then flood the sides. Where I live, it's really hot, and I have sandy soil. It dries out really fast. So what I do is I hill, and then I put a divot in the middle, so that it will hold water, kind of like a bowl. But watermelon doesn't like to get its feet wet. It won't do well, they'll die. And so what I've done is I've taken hay and put it up under the plants, under the feet. The feet is just the bottom, of the plant. And I put it under there, and that helps keep the watermelon plant dry, while it also mulches the ground so that the moisture stays in. So it's a win-win situation. So we have more pole beans over here. And I built this for the kids and grandkids. We have a little more work to do on the end because the wind blew it down. But you can see that our green beans are crawling up. I just took bamboo and went about every 5 feet or so and made a new tripod. And then we used these garden staples here and put these garden staples into the ground with this, and tied the string on them. And they're nice because then you can pull them out and tighten them as needed. And then these green beans are going to grow up. So anytime you can grow up, you can save space. You can do this in a container. You can grow string beans. You could do a little tripod of these in a container and grow green beans right on your patio if you want to. And I like to do that. Can't wait to eat it. And along here, alongside of our green beans, I've got purple, royal burgundy bush beans. And I love these. And I've mixed in with the tomatoes. Over there I have the yellow Cherokee wax beans. I like having that variety of color. And you know, I'm a creator, I'm a designer for theater, and so for me it's about the aesthetics as much as growing the food and eating it. I want my garden to be beautiful. We're working right now, doing the trellis. I wanted to do another trellis too. It didn't happen this year. I want it to be fun for the kids to come out and play. And I built the green bean trellis with the tunnel for my granddaughters and for my son so that they could learn to love being in the garden. And they do. My little 1-year-old granddaughter and a 2-year-old granddaughter, they just love it out here. They have so much fun, just their little feet padding along and looking at things and picking my markers off, so I don't know what's growing, but that's okay. Yes.
I think this is asparagus.
That is asparagus. Yep. First year, it won't produce anything this year. We're just watering it and fertilizing it and letting it live. And then next year it should start to produce. Next year or the year after. The potato plants are starting to die. That's what they're supposed to do. That's when we know it's about ready to harvest.
Earlier this year, I was working full-time in an office job, behind a desk, inside, fluorescent lighting, everything. Picture perfect office job, and it was just too much. It was not the right environment for me, but I also felt myself missing the aspect of creation that I had grown up with as being part of my life for a very long time. And so I had always loved this garden, and I was curious to see who took care of it and how I could get involved. And so I was able to check it out and get a job here, which has really touched every other aspect of my life, being able to come back into the gardening situation and being able to have that creation. So here at the Water Conservation Garden in southern Utah, the whole purpose of it is to be a demonstration garden to show what kind of landscape and what kind of plants you can grow in southern Utah without using any more water than what we recommend to the public for a household. So everything here, we're not going to extremes, using extreme methods. It's all really natural, and it's actually xeriscaped to be part of the land and a lot of native plants. So everything here grows very well with minimum water, so that both keeps our resources in check, using enough water but not too much, and it will keep your water bill down as well. A lot of these plants that you see here that may just look ornamental, you can actually eat. We have a lot of trees here that produce fruit and produce food and are just beautiful. So over here behind me, I have 2 different kinds of peach trees. You see one has been pruned to be very large, and it gives a lot of shade throughout the day. And then I have another one that's smaller that gives some more growth closer to the ground. That one's going to be really great to harvest from without a ladder, and it's all about just how you prune it, and that's really easy to learn even online as well. So part of the garden here is to show that you can have a successful food garden as well as just a garden for beauty. So here's one of our food garden boxes. Here on the edges we have all of our little carrots, and on the inside all these tall ones are onions, and they're all growing very nicely. We have here a lot of tomatoes. I need to go ahead and stake these up. You can see they're growing very well here on this end and on the far end. And then we have some nasturtiums, which is a companion plant. Over here, this huge giant shrub, this is actually a couple of pomegranate trees. And we just keep it pruned up really nicely. And so this would be great for privacy. It's really great to take pictures against as a backdrop. And it creates all of these beautiful coral flowers that then turn into pomegranates that you can eat and bring that food back to your family. And so I would imagine that all different sorts of communities would have some sort of program like this, or even just an outreach program. We also teach classes, and I know that a lot of communities do that as well, that you would just find in your city or county's page online. And hummingbirds, we have a lot of different flowers and a lot of different bushes, and I've learned that almost everything puts off a flower, which is really beautiful if you can notice it around you. I've learned a lot about just random shrubs that it's made me be able to look at the street that I'm passing down and think, I don't even know what all of these plants are that I pass every day. And I'm beginning to have a relationship with that, and it is helping me be more connected to the world around me and my community. Another part of that is that discovering different plants and different things is so exciting, and it's so surprising. So right next to me I have what's called a chocolate flower, and it's called a chocolate flower because they smell like chocolate. These will bloom all summer and they just keep coming back. It's a perennial, and walking past here, we've got a bunch here. It is just a field, a wall of chocolate smelling flowers. And so that's so exciting to be able to discover new things that I didn't even know existed.
Something like this is an investment that you make ahead of time, and it pays off in dividends over the years. There is an investment that comes in with your gardening. The preparation of the soil. We didn't really talk about fertilizer and preparing the soil and preparing your beds. It does take time, but we would come out every morning or often in the evenings and work for maybe an hour and a half together as a family, and it's a great bonding time. But over time, you know, you can see what great things come to pass with a little bit of work every single day, and we're eating out of it. It's healthy, and the number of life lessons that are learned in the garden, I just can't even count them. I won't even begin to tell the stories, but there's just a joyfulness, there's a wholeness, there's a healthiness to it, and it's great therapy if you need it. It's literally grounding, and I'm just so grateful for it.
I'm still figuring things out. I'm making a lot of mistakes, and that's okay. There is so much forgiveness and give and take when it comes to another living being. And I think that's a very important part of life that is hard to learn other places, is that you get as much as you give, but life also gives back. And you create a relationship with the world and with life that I don't think you can get in a lot of other ways. And being able to grow and create as a steward of the earth, I think we need that as humans. And if you look at our history as human beings, we have such a connection to the earth, and I think we've been very displaced from it for a while. And it's so important to find that for yourself. You find a lot of healing and a lot of peace and serenity.
So now that we've learned about Georgics and a little bit of what it means, and well, what it looks like really, let's talk a little bit about how we get started. What are the foundational principles of Georgics? I think one of the great foundations is just to have the heart to care, to care about the world around you, to understand that it was created for you. And because of that, what a gift. We have a stewardship over it. We want to be able to see the whole earth, and yet we need to be able to see the parts of it as well. The microclimates, just our little area of the world where we live, and how that small part functions in the whole. So we need to see both sides, the small and the whole. We need to understand that providence acts on us, and we can act on providence. We can know that we are able to receive what we need when we need it, when our intentions are good and wholesome, and that God can help us with that. We cannot talk about the earth and have a whole conversation about the bounty of the earth without talking about providence and God. There is a higher power, and you have a mission, and some of that mission has to do with the earth, and every person has to find that out for themselves. We can learn self-validation as we enact the principles of Georgic's. Once we do it, we know we can do it. We don't have to listen to anyone else tell us we can't or we shouldn't. We can do it for ourselves, and then we can know. And that is powerful, and that will bleed into the other areas of your life. When you grow a plant and you grow it from seed and you nourish it and you harvest from it, you will then know that you can grow your own food. That's really powerful. Finding your sense of mission, and it may not be in gardening, and that's all right. Whatever it is that you feel that you could spend half your day doing, or even all day, or maybe even all night, and that you would even do it without money because you love it that much, that's probably where your sense of mission lies. Having some real estate and being able to work the land, work where you are, having some ownership, even if you don't own the land yet. I don't own my land, but I'm taking stewardship over it, and I'm preparing to own my own land. I'm practicing. I'm a practice scholar. Community stewardship. That is asking, who needs my help? Who's hungry? What can I do to fulfill that need? That's different than waiting for someone to ask us, because we're looking outside of ourselves. We're looking at the whole and not just ourselves. And then we can really bless other people's lives. And by doing that, we automatically create a community interdependence. That's where we network. We create communities, and through communities, we have strength. Faith is the last founding principle of Georgic's, and we wouldn't even plant a seed if we didn't have faith. We wouldn't get out of our chair to walk over and turn on the light switch if we didn't have a measure of faith. We are each going to have difficulties in our lives. Our crops will be destroyed. Our children may choose other choices. We may lose a job. We may lose a loved one. And we have to have that faith to persevere, to keep going, and to know that the next morning the sun is going to rise, and we have the opportunity again to work and to find joy in the work and to rebuild. We will probably all need to rebuild in our lives. Seasons teach us that. What a beautiful thing that every year we have these seasons, and we have to replant in the spring. We have to prepare the soil, plant our seeds, nourish it, and then harvest it, and then let it lie fallow for a while and rest. We need that in our lives as well. And so every lesson that we need in our lives, I think we can learn in the garden. It's a wonderful schoolhouse. It's where I'm raising my family, and now I get to raise my grandchildren there and make it fun and joyful. And I hope that you will find that joy as well, no matter where you apply these Georgic's principles. They're true in the garden. They're true in life.